Welcome to Studio 58A, live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us around the world, wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor now, the same favor we always ask. Share this video with a friend or 2 or 500 so you can have a very lively discussion. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and comments so we can put them to our guest. Now, in order for Jamaica to realize one of its long-term development goals of making our society safe and secure, the government has often sought to partner with a number of international organizations which can provide the technical, operational, and even financial support necessary to enhance the effectiveness of our local national security agencies. Recently, the government partnered with the EU, which is the European Union, on the Justice, Security, Accountability, Transparency Project, JSAT. Under the project, a number of beneficiaries received funding to help boost their operations, including the National Police College, the Financial Investigation Division, the Counter-Terrorism and Organized Crime Unit, and our guest today, INDECOM. Director of Evaluation and Standards at INDECOM, Kevon Stephenson, is going to share with us how INDECOM has benefited under the JSAT program, as well as get to talking some more about INDECOM's role and functions. And hopefully, if any questions, anything that you want to know about INDECOM, he's right here. You can ask him all those questions and we can create a better environment of understanding around the INDECOM and how they operate. All right, welcome, Kevon. Thank you very much for being here. All right, so just to begin with, JSAT program. Give me an idea of how INDECOM really came to be a part of that program, or some of the objectives that it tried to accomplish.
So INDECOM came to be involved in the program in 2012 when the government of Jamaica signed an agreement with the European Union to provide some assistance to Jamaica in the area of justice for the purpose of course, improving living standards. INDECOM, as an actor in the security industry, it was extended to us that we would benefit from this project. And so in 2014, we started taking steps by utilizing some of the funding that was available. It was just under 1 million euros that was made available to INDECOM. So that is pretty much how we got involved in the program. We started out by setting some objectives with the EU in terms of how we would operate and all the deliverables that would be required under the project. Pretty much for INDECOM, it was really about increasing our capacity to provide oversight to the law enforcement agencies in Jamaica, as well as to increase or improve our own internal accountability regimes and processes. So that is what the program was really geared towards. We have seen significant gains.
All right, so talk to me about some of the gains, because, personally, like, why, as a demanding student, we're like, why should I care? INDECOM has, straightened, but how does that translate to the citizens and the work that you do? How does that translate to the benefit of the citizens at large?
Yes. So one of the issues that we had that, of course, we had a case backlog, and that's one of the things that
justice delayed, as they say.
Exactly.
Justice denied.
So it's one of the things that hamburged us for some time. Of course, when INDECOM started in 2012, we took over quite a number of cases from the BSI. INDECOM started with about half the staff that the BSI had, and so with all the teething pains we had in establishing our offices and so on, of course, a backlog inevitably built up, and so that had been with us for some time. So under the EU program, one of the objectives that was set is for us to reduce, if not eliminate, this backlog. And so we started taking steps, and we took a number of steps in this direction. Firstly, we had our investigators trained properly in order to operate under this new system. The training was conducted by the University of Portsmouth, and this is high-level training by persons who have a lot of experience in the field. And so we had over 48 persons being trained under this project, to include investigators and investigation managers. And so what that has done is really it has allowed our investigators has empowered them really to be able to operate
at a much higher level, more efficiently.
Exactly. conducting major investigations, effective crime scene management, and conducting investigative interviews.
Right,
so these are some of the skills that are necessary to move along an investigation.
And reduce that backlog
exactly.
and get things done. How many persons were, do you know, received the training? How
48
many? 48
received the training, yes. What also happened during this period is that we implemented a 60-day target for investigators to complete their investigations within 60 days of commencement, and that has gone remarkably well. Over 88%.
There's a lot of steps involved in these investigations.
Indeed. So we have really benefited under this program. So that's one of the ways that we set out to increase accountability and efficiency internally. Also, in 2016, we had a backlog of over 800 cases. By the end of 2018 into early 2019, the backlog had reduced to below 100 cases.
Right,
so that's
fantastic.
Something
that's a major move right there.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
of course, a lot of credit to the staff who put in the effort and apply themselves with this new knowledge and with the objectives of the organization to be able to get this done.
Based on my brief here, it seems that you also got some forensic supplies and IT equipment. Yes. I can imagine that must have also been a boost as well.
Indeed, because we want to be able to collect evidence and secure them in a manner that has some integrity, to ensure the integrity of it ensures the integrity of the process. And so we need gloves, we need swabs, and all of those things. And these are everyday things that we need to get the job done. The EU project came in very
I mean, just
handy.
a personal clarification, it seems that you are an in-house operation in terms of investigating, collecting evidence. Because, when you see these movies, it shows there's this separation in terms of the forensic unit relative to the investigators, relative to the prosecutors, that kind of thing. So I mean, do you find that it's more of an in-house operation over at INDECOM? There's like a one-stop shop, for lack of a better phrase, because you have the forensics and so on.
Well, we do quite a bit of we are quite self-sufficient. Probably one of the only things that we don't have is a forensic lab internally in terms of doing our own analysis. But we do have a forensic team. We have the investigators, the investigation division. We have our legal officers who opine on investigations at the end of the day. And of course, we have the regular support from other persons, secretaries, finance department, and so on. But as you said earlier, a lot of persons may wonder how INDECOM operates.
And as a matter of fact, that's a question we got right away as we started. Morning to Mr. Calvin McLeod. He's just asking very simple, good morning, how do they work? How does INDECOM work?
Yes.
So I guess take the opportunity to clarify for members of the public who might not necessarily understand how INDECOM operates.
Yes. So I'll start with just telling you a little bit about our remit. So INDECOM investigates, conduct investigations in cases where there is death or serious injuries or any other breach of rights allegedly committed by members of the security forces. The security forces being the JDF, the JCF, and the Department of Corrections. So there are two main ways that we get complaints. One, self-reporting. So if a police officer should discharge his firearm or any other member of the security force, it's required that they report this to us immediately. And of course, so that's one way of reporting. And then the other way is that persons who are aggrieved, they may come to our offices, and we have an office in Kingston, one in Mandeville, and another one in Montego Bay. They can go into any of those offices and make a complaint. So once we have gotten those complaints, what we do is that we assess it to see if it falls within our remit. And so once we are sure that it falls within our remit, it is assigned to an investigation team. Investigators, if it's, let us say it's a shooting, we would dispatch a team to the scene, and the team would be comprised of a senior investigator, in some cases the director of complaints for the region. We would have a forensic sub-team, and they would go out and they would conduct the scene forensic, and they would collect exhibits and so on, submit to the lab for processing. If there's a body, the body would also be processed. And once we get back to office, it is of actually doing the on the scene, the on the ground work, getting witnesses and so on. At the end of that process, once we have gotten back the results from the exhibit submitted to the lab and all those other agencies, we put together a final investigation report. Once that final investigation report is cleared by the Director of Complaints for the region, it goes to the legal department, who then carry out their own analysis. And then once they are satisfied that the matter is investigated properly, a commission's report is then completed, and that is disseminated to the concerned officer or officers, the complainant, and if it's a dead person, then it goes to their family, and all other stakeholders. If it's a matter for charge, it would go to the Director of Public Prosecution.
That actually brings me to a question now. I mean, in terms of, it was something that was in the media. I'm not sure that I'm properly, I don't know if I'm asking the question the right way, but let me ask it all the same, and maybe you can clarify for me in terms of whether or not INDECOM is the one who charges officers, or do they submit that to the DPP's office, which is Director of Public Prosecutions, who in turn does the charging and so on and so on. Just break that down for me in terms of how INDECOM operates.
So under the current position, what happens at the end of an investigation, if it is that the matter, in our opinion, is one that could lead to a charge, then the file is then sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, who makes a ruling. If the DPP agrees that the concerned officer should be charged, then they respond to our office, and then the file is sent to the Commissioner of Police, and the information is then, the person is then charged, arrested, charged, information laid, and then the matter goes through the court system in the usual way.
And you provide, I suppose, a supporting role to the DPP's office, or do you take the lead in the matter, if you understand what I mean?
Well, once the matter is with the DPP for prosecution, then they will require our investigators to assist in terms of, because the investigator would have to give evidence in many of these cases. So we provide that support role. In fact, if the witnesses are to get to court, then our court liaison person would have that done. And that's one of the new things that we have implemented as well, where we have recruited a court liaison coordinator or a court liaison officer to help with getting some of these witnesses to court and so on, and provide support to the witnesses for the purpose of attending court.
All right, so you mentioned it briefly in terms of how INDECOM receives its reports, self-reporting, and if persons feel aggrieved and so on. So I guess the question is, how do people make contact with you? And I mean, what should people know? What are some of the factors they should consider before deciding to make a report to INDECOM? Let's say, for example, a family member of somebody who was in a situation and feels like maybe, okay, this might be something, I feel like I should maybe call INDECOM about this because I don't like how this felt. What should they keep in mind before they decide to call you guys and make a report?
One of the issues, the first issue to consider is whether it is one for INDECOM. So if they are aggrieved, it must be that it is by a member of the JCF. And if it is by a member of the JDF, then the JDF personnel will have to be acting in support of the JCF. And of course, there are cases where persons are injured in prisons. So that would be a complaint coming from the DCS. So that's one of the things. And it's death, injury, any other abuse of rights. They can make a complaint to us. The next thing that they must consider is whether or not they will be willing to provide support as we conduct the investigation. It's no use making a complaint and then refuse to participate in the process further. So that's one of the things. They should make a decision in terms of what they want from the process. Do you just want INDECOM to be aware of it? Are you willing, if a charge should come from the matter, are you willing to go to court and to give evidence if the need arises? So those are some of the considerations that they should make. They should also consider whether or not it's something that they can work out without having to make a formal complaint to INDECOM. If it's a family member, you mentioned that earlier, is it something that you can get a third party who is interested?
Dispute resolution or something like that.
Resolution and so on. So these are some of the considerations that they should make when they're making
All
their
right,
complaints.
so as you have it, people, we're here talking with we're on the subject of the Justice, Security, and Accountability Transparency Program, but we just took a slight detour to get because we do find that persons are interested in INDECOM and the way it operates and so on. So we're going to take some time to really see if we can clarify that. We will go right back to the JSAT program. Stick around, we definitely will be. But while we have our guest here, let's just take advantage of the opportunity. Now, let me ask you, do you feel, as we were talking earlier, we were saying that a lot of the times the perception surrounding INDECOM is fed by the media, fed by newspapers, fed by articles which aren't necessarily coming from a place of accurateness, for lack of a better phrase. And so there tends to be a misconception surrounding INDECOM that it's a kind of conflicting kind of operation, meaning that they go out there with a conflicting, usually like it's us versus them, us versus security forces, that kind of thing. I want you to respond to that and let persons appreciate that's not exactly how you see yourselves operating in space.
Yes, I mean, it's a very important question that you ask, because it is a matter that has caused some anxiety in society, that INDECOM is against the police or the other members of the security forces, when really and truly this is not the case. In fact, we see our role as providing oversight for of the use of force in law enforcement, to improve standards in the security forces, to hold members of the security forces accountable where the need arises. In fact, a lot of persons don't understand that we not only investigate where a civilian is injured by, let's say, a police officer or a soldier, but if another soldier should injure a fellow soldier, then we would investigate in that matter as well. So what INDECOM provides is an independent oversight of the use of force in law enforcement, because it is, for some time, we have recognized that it is not the best situation where we have the police investigating the police. It is better, international best practice indicate that it is better to have an independent body investigate these matters instead of the very officers investigating their colleagues.
Right.
So what I would say is, I would encourage persons not to get caught up in the popular rhetoric, but to take some time to try to understand what the roles and functions of INDECOM are. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure that members of the society have as much information as they require in order to have a good appreciation for the work of INDECOM. And so we are working on our public relations campaign as we speak. So very shortly, we will start to engage the public a lot more. In fact, we also do currently, even at in a limited way, we engage with members of the communities across Jamaica. We sometimes meet with them in their town halls. Sometimes we meet with police officers. In fact, the directors of complaints, they conduct sessions with the police to bring awareness to even the members of the security forces as to what the roles and functions of INDECOM are, so that they have a better understanding, a better working relationship. So I would end by saying that INDECOM is not against the police. We're not against anybody.
Look at the camera, look at the people.
We're not against any member of society. What we are here to do is to provide independent oversight so as to raise standards and increase accountability within the security forces in Jamaica. The people of Jamaica deserve to have an efficient and disciplined security force.
I mean, as you said, you might sound to put it very simply and very bluntly, you can't necessarily have persons in one organization. It doesn't look objective and fair and transparent when you have one set of people investigating themselves, essentially.
Indeed.
So to ensure that things appear as objective and as transparent as possible, you need to have that third party, INDECOM, step in, completely impartial, unbiased, just going in there to look at the evidence and just go wherever the evidence takes them. If that means somebody has to be charged, then so be it. But that's, at the end of the day, you can be satisfied that an independent, impartial, unbiased opinion was delivered, and so justice should be served accordingly, right? Now, Calvin McLeod asked another question. He asked, you may have touched on it, but let me ask it all the same. If you rehash it, that's important. It says, does INDECOM work with the police in matters, or do you work alongside the security forces to settle matters as they arise? You know what I mean? Depending on however the investigation proceeds.
It depends. There is some degree of cooperation with the police. So, for example, if, let's say, there's a case that comes up and it is one that we've seen where there is a breach of force policy. If it's not a major breach, what we sometimes do is to refer these matters to the inspectorate or IProbe in the JCF for them to look into that, to see how best they can treat with these breaches of policy. There are times when they need to conduct counseling sessions for members. There are times when there is retraining. So these are some of the areas that we work with the police on. There is also room for collaboration with some of the matters that we investigate. For example, if a part of the investigation involves the police doing some action towards completing an investigation on their side. So in a lot of cases, you find that the police will say that a crime has been committed. At the same time, INDECOM is investigating the use of force by the police. So insofar as providing exhibits, for example, or a forensic report regarding the processing of the scene, there are some times when we share those reports with the police, but outside of that, we don't share witness statements and any other confidential material. In fact, the police, when we are on the scenes, the police process the scenes side by side with INDECOM. So that is material that they would have had access to anyway.
Until they share,
but
exactly.
Let us say they miss something and they want to have access to, let's say, to some photographs. Probably that's something that we would share with them.
All right. So there's naturally, because you collaborate where necessary.
Indeed.
All right. And so from the perception of the public, how do you feel, I guess, based on all the work that you've been putting in? Do you feel like there's a shift? Do you feel like persons are better understanding what you do? Or, I guess I want to understand is how does INDECOM feel the public perceives them? From your perspective, how do you feel the public perceives your office? And is that something you want to change, or is that something you're satisfied with, or from your perspective?
I mean, in Jamaica, there are many publics. I mean,
that is true. That's true.
Of course, a lot of the persons who we serve, they see INDECOM as some hope that if it is that they are aggrieved, an independent and impartial investigation will be carried out. And so that is one of the things that we want to maintain, that INDECOM is an independent and impartial body. We are not for any particular individual or group. But once there is an incident reported to us, it is investigated with all the resources that we have available to us. There are, of course, in society we've heard a lot of things being said that are not necessarily accurate about INDECOM and how INDECOM operates. But a lot of these things are in fact not true, right? There's one thing that I've heard, that INDECOM came about to lock up police, but that is not.
People have that perception.
Yes, we never start an investigation with the view in mind that a charge will be laid.
All
right. What we normally do is to investigate to see what comes of the matter. We draft our terms of reference and we conduct an impartial investigation, collecting all the evidence from all parties, whether it supports a charge or it does not support a charge. And then at the end of the day, we put together a report, submit the report to the legal department, and the legal department provides a ruling. If it is that the legal department feels that this is a matter that in which a charge should be laid, then that is sent on to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. So there are so many levels, there are so many tiers of oversight that it is very difficult to make errors. in the work that we do.
Right. Nenita, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Nenita Miles is asking, does INDECOM go out on operations with the police? I suspect another question relating to whether or not you guys collaborate more often than not, and the nature of the collaboration that you do sometime.
So our collaboration does not extend to going out on operations with the police. In fact, we never get involved in the operations of the police or the JDF or the DCS. All we do, we go in after the fact. If there's an incident that has been reported, then the majority of our work would be looking into what has happened. Of course, there are cases where we do proactive investigations. So let us say we have seen a trend in a particular region or in a particular force, then we would initiate an independent investigation, more of a scientific research into the matter to see what unfolds from it.
Now, in terms of your objectives going forward as an agency, I would say long and short-term objectives. Can you just get into some of those, and what are the major, tent poles that you're looking to accomplish as you go forward, maybe next year, or maybe proceed even longer than that? So in terms of major accomplishments and things that people can keep an eye out for those things.
Yes. Well, our main objective is really to increase efficiency and accountability in the security forces. So the country, as I said earlier, deserves to have an efficient, disciplined, and effective security service, whether it's the JCF, the DCS, or the JDF. So that is our overarching objective. As we work towards that, one of the things that we are trying to achieve, and we have had some successes, we would say, in reducing the number of fatalities that result from interaction with the members of the security forces. When INDECOM started, we were averaging over 300 per year. By 2014, we were just over 100. Last year, there was a reduction, further reduction, and this year, we're happy to say that we have had a 40% reduction so far. So last year around this time, we had 40% more fatalities than we do now. So
40%. That's a significant drop. That's a significant drop.
So we are hoping that fatalities will be below 100 at the end of 2019.
All right, and your efforts should hopefully contribute to getting persons to our members of the security forces to think twice before the use of force becomes a course of action, if you will.
Yes. Force should only be used if it is absolutely necessary, and that's one of the things that we consider when we are conducting our investigations.
So beyond just, for example, beyond just the stats in terms of reductions of extrajudicial killings or incidents or reports of use of force by the police, by members of security forces, what are some of the other things that you look for as evidence that things are progressing in the direction that you want it to, that you're seeing the kind of those are naturally the most obvious obvious things, but what are some of the other things that you look for and you can point to and say, all right, this is good, this is moving in the right direction, the system as a whole is moving in the direction that you want it to?
Yes, the commission INDECOM is always inward looking, in the very same way that we hold the members of the security force is accountable for their actions. We look at how we operate as a body, and one of the things that we are trying to achieve is to ensure that INDECOM is one of the premier investigative civilian investigation bodies in the world. We want to ensure that our investigators are empowered and they are of the capacity that they can investigate almost any matter which involves the use of force by law enforcement. So oversight, we are trying to ensure that we provide first-rate oversight for the use of force of law enforcement in Jamaica. And of course, we have made some contribution in the region as well. About 2 years ago, we had the Caribbean Use of Force conference where we invited members from different Caribbean countries and of course from our local forces and other stakeholders, and we produced a use of force handbook, a model policy and that we are hoping. We are
Yeah,
still in the process of trying to get buy-in from the different
Yeah, we'd
security
love to
forces
have maybe copies of that
in
so we
the-
can use that to
in the-
disseminate members of the public. Because I'm
in the-
sure members of the public are not even necessarily sure
Mhm.
what, when the use of force is applicable. Because, I mean, we tend to just assume that the police, based on their training, based on their situations, they know
Yes.
when it is supposedly acceptable. But it would be good for us as the public to say, okay, well, maybe excessive, extra.
Yes.
Can you shed some light on that as to what are some of the things that are in that use of force policy or the handbook that person should be aware of?
Yes. So one of the main elements of the handbook is really ensuring that officers are equipped with a range of means. So we're looking at not only the use of the firearm. I mean, there are times when a firearm is not necessary, a baton, maybe pepper spray or tasers, that kind of thing. And so one of the issues we have in Jamaica and in the region too is that most of the security forces are only equipped with firearms, and sometimes
as the first course of action.
Yes. I mean, if you are threatened as a member of the security force and the only thing you have is a firearm, then more than likely you will use your firearm. So we are trying to say to the country and to the other countries in the Caribbean that there are other means that you can use to quell disturbances and to enforce public order in the society.
All right. I guess without getting into too many specifics, it's not like, oh, Mr. Officer, why you pull out the gun? You could have, I mean, where you could have choke him or you could have restrain him, with force or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
I guess before we moving into and switch tack again, is there a central message that you would like all people in Jamaica, from talking from the young right up to the old, to just be the key takeaway about INDECOM? What is their role and function in a nutshell, and in terms of the main thing that you want persons to know and appreciate about the work that your organization does?
Okay. So INDECOM is a professional body providing first-rate oversight for the use of force of law enforcement in Jamaica. And INDECOM is, as I said, it's an independent body. We're not on anybody's side. What we are trying to do is to intervene at a particular stage to ensure that whatever was done by the members of the security forces is above board. And if it is not above board, then we will hold them accountable. I think if members of the society understand that, I think the narrative will somewhat change in the near future.
All right, so there you have it, members of the public. This says INDECOM is not on anyone's side. Nobody's side. They don't take sides. They just go where the evidence shows them, and on that basis, they take action accordingly. And naturally, getting this job done requires lots of work, lots of effort, and lots of resources. And so, with that said, we just want to go back to the JSAT program and the ways in which, we just rehash again the ways in which it has benefited INDECOM and the ways in which it has strengthened your ability to achieve your mandate. Just to rehash how, INDECOM has benefited under the initiative and how your operations have been boosted once again.
So I started earlier by telling you about the reduction of the backlog in the investigations division. On the other side, the legal department, and this is where the true results are seen, because it's really at that stage that INDECOM makes an output when the matters are resolved at the legal department. Before the JSAT program, we had very limited legal staff. The program added 7 persons to the legal department, to include a general counsel, other lawyers, and secretarial support. And the result of that has been that in 2015, before we hired the staff, the legal department was producing just over 100 reports per year. And at the end of 2018, 807 reports were
Wow,
produced.
that's a major jump.
And that continued to increase. So that has resulted in a significant reduction in the backlog. What does this mean? This means that a lot of complainants, a lot of officers who had cases pending would have received final reports. Their matters would have been resolved from that level. And so we are very happy with that result. Officers sometimes are waiting to be promoted and cannot be promoted because
they have a matter
there's
before,
a matter. Yes, families need to move on, they need closure. So in this area, we're able to do a lot more in terms of providing that closure to a lot of our customers.
So it's fair to say that
Yes.
a lot of you're making several progressive steps forward in terms of boosting the efficiency of the organization,
Indeed.
Ensuring that things are handled more speedily,
Indeed.
more effectively as well, because it's not just good to do it fast. You know,
Yes.
naturally you have to make sure that you cross the T's, dot your I's, and make sure when the report is submitted there are no errors there, and it comes back to you and
Yes.
back and forth, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So things are progressing in that regard.
Indeed. Another thing too is that we realize that with the funding support, in order to have the kind of impact that we needed to have, we needed to make some changes internally. And as I said to you earlier, INDECOM is always inward looking. We are trying to see how we can improve our operation and become more efficient. And so what we did was that we implemented a number of policies internally and that coupled with the support in the training of staff and the procurement of forensic supplies, that then had a greater impact because we improved the way that we were doing business internally. One of the things that we did was that the backlog reduction strategy, we had a formal strategy implemented. And of course, a part of that was the 60-day target, where we required that investigations are completed as far as practicable within 60 days. And I said to you that over 88% of the cases are being completed within 60 days currently. Another thing is that we implemented a system whereby all new cases coming to INDECOM were reviewed by a panel within 14 days. So the panel is headed by the commissioner. On that panel, you have a representative from the legal department, the general counsel, the director of complaints for the region that the cases are being reviewed for, as well as the director of evaluation and standards. The assistant commissioner also sits on that panel. So this is done every 14 days. All new cases coming in are looked at this level. So the other thing was that we realized that a lot of the incidents that we receive are critical incidents. When somebody dies, it is a critical incident. And so we realized that we needed to boost capacity in that area, and we
which
needed
is one
to
of the
regulate.
bigger challenges.
Yes.
Capacity is means boots on the ground. It means getting things done fast.
Exactly. So we realized we needed to formalize the way that we conduct these major investigations. I'll tell you a little bit about how we did things before the major investigations policy. Before, it would be one investigator investigating a matter, regardless of the nature of it. There were special cases where we had to put a team, but what we did was to employ a team approach to investigations, particularly very serious matters. So what we did was that we categorize the matters that we got from the initial stages, or if it is that the matter is not categorized properly, then when it comes to 14-day review, we would look at the matter to see whether or not we should change the category. And so the three categories that we have: non-MIR, so these matters are matters that are treated in the usual way. So one investigator is investigating with support from supervisors.
Right.
And then we have the MIRB, and these are shooting cases where you have there's a possibility from the outset that, based on statements that we have received, that there may be a charge at the end of the day. Of course, there is public interest in it and so on. So those kinds of cases would fall under the MIRB category. And then the MIRA category, that's where we have cases where we have allegations of systematic abuse, cases involving
much
senior
higher
officers,
profile
higher profile cases. And so for the MIR B and A categories, those investigations would be headed by a senior member of the investigation staff, either a chief investigator or a senior investigator, and they would be supported by a team. And under the MIR, what we did was to define roles. So we would have somebody responsible for family liaison, for witness management, and so on. And so we had different roles under the MIR. We also have an MIR review system where these cases are reviewed outside of the 14-day review. They have weekly meetings and so on to ensure that these matters are being dealt with properly. A significant change under this system was really the implementation of the lead investigating officer's policy file. The lead investigating officer's policy file is where the investigator is required to rationalize all the decisions. They are required to record and rationalize all decisions made in the conduct of the investigation, and that is something that is new to Jamaica. Sometimes we make decisions, but we don't write them down and say why
you just
we
do them
made.
in the present moment, whatever,
exactly.
and then
So
you can't validate or just justify it when the time comes.
Exactly. So if somebody should take up the file 1 year from now when you're not there, and they want to know why it is that X was done instead of Y, then they can look and say, these are the reasons that were given. This is the information that was available at the time when the decision was made. Another thing too, we had
simple as they say, it is a very major thing.
It is.
Trust me,
We
saves a
have to
whole heap of time.
Exactly, because if we are saying that the police should be accountable, we too must be accountable.
That's true.
And so we take that very seriously. Another change in terms of policy was the family liaison policy. So we implemented a policy that deals predominantly with the engagement of family members during the course of the investigation. There was some criticism some time ago from Amnesty that some family members were saying that their cases were going on for some time and they weren't getting
talking to them and so on.
We ensure that this no longer happens. So investigators are required to communicate with the family members at regular interval, and of course the kind of information that can be given to them, information that doesn't prejudice the investigation and so on. We legislated that internally. The other thing, major change, is the 24-hour control room system. And we had an informal system before. So what would happen is that a member of staff would be working through the night at home with a cellular phone, waiting to receive calls for shootings and so on. We decided that this wasn't working. For INDECOM at 8 years old, that's no longer a good arrangement that we wanted.
Really
because we're always looking for ways to improve, you see. So we decided that we're going to start a 24 hours control room, and so that has been working very well. In fact, we have been getting incidents reported to INDECOM quicker than before, and so on. There's engagement with the WhatsApp line and so on and so forth. So indeed, it has, in the early stages, because we're about a year in now, we've seen significant changes in terms of how matters are reported to INDECOM and how complaints are handled internally.
All right, so lots of things happening, essentially. Lots of things work being done to ensure that INDECOM is best equipped to handle the matters. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the goal is a transformed public sector. The goal is to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. And so that can only happen if we have a safe, secure society. We can only have a safe, secure society if our security forces are equipped to conduct the investigations and so on, to ensure that justice is served. INDECOM is part of that process. And so whenever they are being strengthened, their institutional capacity is being strengthened, it's a win for all of Jamaica. It's a major thing, and we all need to get behind it and support it and ensure and make noise. Make sure that when we know that our people are getting the resources they need to accomplish the goals that they have, and so on and so forth. So this JSAT program is a win for Jamaica. It's a win for INDECOM. It's a win for our security sector. And we're glad that the effort is being made to raise up your institutional capacity so you can respond to the public's needs. Because, as we all know, if something happens and, it's unfortunately, it's a situation where many persons get into situations with the police. And so it's good to know that there is somebody who is impartial, who will come in, look at the situation, investigate, separate the matters, and make sure that all sides are adequately and sufficiently represented and justice is served. And that can only be a win for Jamaica as a whole. Mildred Brown online, I hope I get that right. Mildred, she was online saying that she's listening to the conversation and she's listening closely to what we're saying and she's appreciating the information. So it's getting the opportunity to truly understand what INDECOM does, what their role is, and so on. And we appreciate that, Mildred. Thank you very much for your comment. We've been talking for a while and we don't necessarily want things to drag on for too long, so I think this is a good time for us to wrap. Right. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you sending your questions and your comments. We really, really do appreciate it. This is your show, so we love when you talk to us so we can talk back to you and answer the questions that you have that you might want to be answered about INDECOM, etc. But, as a matter of fact, like what have you, if you can share INDECOM's details, a person who might want to contact you or get in touch with you can do so.
Yes. So, our office number 968-8875. Members of the public can feel free to call us. You can also look up INDECOM. We have a website. You can always go online and you can make your complaints there as well, and somebody will get in touch with you as soon as we receive comments from you. I'm
sure you're on social media as well.
We're on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, of course, and on Facebook, so you can find us there.
So take the opportunity, look them up, get some information. I'm sure they're disseminating all sorts of information that you can use, you never know when that information might just be what you need. You might just be in a position where you need to call INDECOM, look them up, make yourself aware of their numbers and the ways in which you can contact them, the things that they do investigate, so you don't necessarily waste a phone call. If necessary, you want to call them and make sure that when you're calling them, there's reason for them to move and act and, take action on your behalf or on behalf of the parties involved, so on and so forth. Remember, like I said, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, let us know, and we'll try as best as possible to have that person in studio soon to answer all your questions. Don't forget to follow us at Jamaica Information Service on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.